Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Member for Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today under the provision of Standing Order 40 to give notice that at the conclusion of oral question period, I will seek unanimous consent of this Assembly to consider the following motion. Be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly today commemorates the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and that each member of the Assembly today renews her or his commitment to work to eradicate racism and to promote equality in all areas of endeavor in his or her personal and public lives. I have copies for all members.
Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to table the 1989-90 annual report for the Department of Tourism.
Minister of Advanced Education.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the 1989 annual report for Athabasca University and the 1989-90 annual financial report for the University of Lethbridge.
Additional Edmonton Jasper Place.
Speaker, I wish to file copies of the ALPAC Scientific Review Panel response and analysis, today's date by Dr. Jim Planbeck, University of Alberta, and Mitch Brono, a private citizen of Edmonton.
Introduction of special guests.
No.
Ministerial statements.
Sir, culture, multiculturalism.
Mr. Speaker, today is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The Honorable Elaine McCoy, the Minister responsible for the Human Rights Commission, Steve Zarewski, the MLA for Redwater Andrew, and the Chairman of the Alberta Multiculturalism Commission, join the Premier and myself in inviting all members of the Assembly to recognize and support this important occasion. Mr. Speaker, we're fortunate in Alberta to have a magnificent diversity of customs and cultures, and we have in this province a communal fabric that is wonderfully vibrant and alive, and a society in which it is free and in fact encouraged to hold different beliefs, speak a multitude of languages, and celebrate each their own unique traditions. Our government's position has always been clear, Mr. Speaker. Intolerance and prejudice due to color, race, or creed is not acceptable. Through various departments, government agencies, multiculturalism and human rights commissions and other agencies, we're working in partnership, Mr. Speaker, with a wide range of organizations in Alberta and across the country to eliminate racial discrimination. Whether native-born or a newly arrived Canadian, to be an Albertan is to recognize and to appreciate that our diversity in custom, culture, language, and religion enriches our everyday lives.
Will Minister order in the whole House, please? If you'd like to chat, there's a room out the back.
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there are a few individuals who fear people who are different from them. Our Native community, visible minorities, and certain religious groups have been particularly hurt by the ignorance of a few individuals, and we must continue our ongoing work with all Albertans to improve the situation. We know that the vast majority of Albertans are offended by the actions of those few and seek through their own actions and by their support of the initiatives of this government to erase all vestiges of racism and bigotry. The Alberta Multiculturalism Commission, for example, has recently announced an action plan which will assist businesses, schools, industry, community, youth, and other organizations and individuals to appreciate the province's rich, human, diverse resource. Among the projects underway is the Alberta People Project, which will develop multimedia resources for educational purposes. The project will be undertaken in cooperation with my colleague, the Honorable Jim Dinning, the Minister of Education, and will be available to the public and secondary school children across Alberta. My colleague today, Mr. Steve Zarewski, the Chairman of the Commission, is in Stony Plain at this moment, talking with elementary students about the cultural diversity and racial harmony. Human Rights Commission has continued to take strong stands against racism and for understanding. Commissioners and staff members of both the Human Rights and the Multiculturalism Commissions continue to promote human rights practices and principles throughout the province. The Alberta government believes, Mr. Speaker, the same options and opportunities should exist for every citizen in our society, whether a fourth or fifth generation Canadian or a brand new immigrant, and we will continue to strive to meet that objective. Completely eliminating racial and cultural discrimination may seem like a tall order, but then Albertans are used to filling tall orders. It's what makes us unique like no other place on earth. It's what makes Alberta great. Mr. Speaker, I would ask all members of this Assembly to join with me on this special day to reaffirm our respect for and commitment to a culturally and racially diverse province. We are a stronger and better province when all Albertans treat each other with respect and with dignity.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We in the official opposition are very happy that the minister has proclaimed this day. Mr. Speaker, we are mindful of the history of this day and its roots in the commemoration of the Sharpeville massacre of peaceful demonstrations against apartheid in South Africa. A lot has changed in South Africa since that day in 1966, Mr. Speaker, but much remains to be done before South Africa is a nation of true equality. We wish the people of South Africa the very best in their struggle to end racial discrimination, and we express our solidarity with them. But let's look a little closer to home, Mr. Speaker, here in Alberta. There are serious problems of racial discrimination in this province, and proclamations are not going to eliminate those problems. On Tuesday, the head of the Canadian Human Rights Commission pointed to some very shameful examples of racism which have taken place in Alberta. Sales of racist pins and posters, white supremacist rallies. And I point out to the minister that the Alberta Human Rights Commission was very slow to act on both of these incidents, Mr. Speaker, and that slowness cannot be tolerated again. If the minister or the government needs to change the act to improve the ability of the commission to respond, then she should, Mr. Speaker. Racism complaints are frequent to the Alberta Human Rights Commission. There have already been 23 complaints in the first 2 months of this year. Many of these are in the area of employment, pointing to the need for employment equity legislation. Children and adults who don't speak English are denied the opportunities to learn and work to their full potential. Human services aren't available in languages other than English. The services and community health units especially need to be available to new Canadians. There are thousands of Aboriginal peoples in this province living in communities stripped of economic viability with high rates of unemployment and lacking appropriate services. Mr. Speaker, I point out to the Minister immigration levels in Alberta are expected to increase. We'll have 220,000 new Canadians arrive this year and 250,000 every year for the next 4 years after that. Unless this government takes action now, these people will come to a province rife with racial discrimination with little hope of improvement. I challenge the government and the ministers to take concrete action to eliminate racial discrimination in Alberta. As legislators, we can lead with progressive laws, and as public figures, we can lead by example. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I pointed out to the House that over 1,000 hospital beds and almost 500 healthcare jobs have been eliminated by this government since 1987. Members will also recall that I predicted that more slashing is on the way. Well, Mr. Speaker, it took less than 1 day for that prediction to come true in a very big way. Late yesterday, Calgarians learned that the Calgary General Hospital has been forced to slash over 300 jobs because of a huge cash crunch this government has forced on hospitals all over this province. This must be the innovative approach to health care that the Minister of Health mentioned yesterday. The old conservative slash and burn strategy, Mr. Speaker, cruel and heartless. And my question to the Minister is this. I wonder if the Minister would skip the bureaucratic jargon that we're so used to hearing from her and tell us straight, how does she justify this destruction to the Calgary General Hospital and devastation to 300 Calgarians who are about to lose their jobs?
Mr. Speaker, I don't intend to quote anyone but the board of the Calgary General Hospital. when it has assured me and the people of this province that they will be able to be balancing their budget in 1991 without any impact on patient services or patient program. My first commitment and my first responsibility to Albertans is to ensure their reasonable access to health care. And the board is acting responsibly in order to ensure that we can continue to provide that kind of health care in this province.
Speaker, that's absolute and total nonsense. You cut 10% of the people there. You say that's not going to affect health care. What about those people, Minister? What a cruel answer to them. And I say to this minister that it's a lack of funding that's causing this right across this province, Mr. Speaker. And for her to stand up and say that services won't be cut, Mr. Speaker, I ask this minister this. Mr. Speaker, I ask this minister this. Even at this late date, would this minister immediately make funds available to the Calgary General so that the Calgary healthcare workers can keep their jobs and so the hospital can maintain its level of patient care? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, the first purpose of the health system is to ensure the reasonable access of Albertans to health services. I don't know where the Leader of the Opposition has been in the past little while when we've been starting to talk about the need to look at how we're using our inpatient beds. And one of the things that's going on at the Calgary General Hospital is that they are looking at patient services that were traditionally provided on an inpatient basis and providing them on an outpatient basis. I happen to think that's a very progressive move in the health system, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the Leader of the Opposition did not.
Mr. Speaker, unbelievable. 300 people losing their jobs, and that's progressive. Yes, progressive conservative. That's what it is, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, instead of saying that there isn't money, we've got millions for Novotel, we've got more cabinet ministers than we need, but we don't have money for health care in this province, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask this minister, should know better. Is this minister not embarrassed to stand in this house and mouth platitudes while the policies of her government systematically destroy people's livelihoods and a health care system in Alberta? Is she not embarrassed and ashamed? If not, she should be.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is patently wrong when he says there's no money for health care in this province, because we have increased our health care budget, as I indicated yesterday, by an additional $292 million this year, bringing the total to about 3.6. I believe that the work that's going on throughout the health care system, the work that's showing hospitals a way to get the best value out of the resources, a model project of the acute care funding plan, which is being looked at by other provinces, a model that has been built by our own hospitals in this province, is a tribute to their commitment to the sustainability of our healthcare system, even if the New Democrats aren't committed to its sustainability.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I would expect that from some of the backbenchers, Mr. Speaker, but that sort of attitude I find very wrong coming from this minister, Mr. Speaker. And the people of Alberta will be glad to know that. But Mr. Speaker, let me look over there. I guess to the provincial treasurer, Mr. Speaker. Now, let's deal with the provincial treasurer, where we seem to have all sorts of money, millions and millions of dollars, not health care, though, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to ask the treasurer this, because he must have been involved in the Priorities Committee and know what's going on with Novotel, Mr. Speaker. The other two aren't responsible, but maybe he is, Mr. Speaker. We've noticed that the search at the corporate registry, Mr. Speaker, has turned up something, I think, a little strange. The same chief executive officer, John Burroughs, who was fired from his position in November over this fiasco, is still a director not only of Novotel, but also of TELUS, Mr. Speaker. Now, this is interesting. Also, another interesting fact, Mr. Speaker, is that Neil Weber is also director. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, Mr. Speaker. Now, my question simply is this to the treasurer, who must know about this. Will the treasurer confirm that Mr. Burroughs is still a director of Novotel and TELUS Corporation?
Mr. Speaker, obviously I can't confirm that. The Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunications is not here today, but I'm sure either he could answer that or it could be put on the order paper for us to check, but I can't add additional information, Mr. Speaker.
I can assure the Treasurer that he should know, because I take it you're on Priorities Committee and have some idea of what's going on. Yesterday the Premier didn't know. This Minister never shows up to ask questions, so we have to ask it to you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then, through the Treasurer, I assure him that this is the case. And will the Treasurer, as member of the Priorities Committee, explain why one of the people that the government held responsible for Novatel's problems, in fact, who was fired from his day-to-day job at Novatel, is deemed now responsible enough to set policy for the very same company as a director?
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, the member is asking for a question of fact, and I don't want to say that it appears that the member, when he did resign, referred to that he would not any longer be associated with Novatel, but I can't give you any specific information on that. Presumably the member has just pointed out he checked the registry, but there is a lag between the notification with respect to change in directorship in particular.
Well, is this what the Minister is now saying has happened? There's a lag there, Mr. Speaker, because he said he didn't know anything about it before. I would remind the Treasurer that the Alberta Business Corporations Act requires by law that a change of directorship must be filed within 15 days of the change, Mr. Speaker. How does he justify that?
Again, Mr. Speaker, the member is asking for a question of a legal opinion, and I'm not able to express that view. I can only say that it's my understanding that that gentleman had severed his connection with Novatel.
Thank you. Leader of the Liberal Party, Edmonton Glengarry.
Speaker, my questions are to the minister responsible for housing. Evidence is now pretty clear that Edmonton is moving towards a serious problem in the area of subsidized housing. Recently, the Ghermezian family sold West Edmonton Village back to the Alberta government, or to the Alberta government, for $1. Of the 1,176 rental units in that complex, some 558 are part of the component of subsidized housing. It is our information, Mr. Speaker, that the management of the village is now indicating that there will be no longer a continuation of that subsidized component. My first question to the minister is this. Given that there are growing waiting lists with respect to subsidized housing in Edmonton, will the minister confirm that he will redirect the management of that village to keep that subsidized component of 558 units available for subsidized housing?
Mr. Speaker, I certainly appreciate the question and the concern of the Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party. The responsibility for dealing with some 415 various CHIP and MAP programs now rests with a new body that we've established called the Mortgage Properties Incorporated. The basic function of that body will be to look at the 415 mortgages and determine whether they should continue as private mortgages or whether we at this time as a government should look at putting the mortgages in the proper economic position, and as well looking at dispensing with some of those mortgages into the private sector. And that thrust is starting at the present time. One of the first mortgages that we have been dealing with is with regards to the West Edmonton Village and the responsibility of the people that hold the mortgage. In that particular case, the number of units, half of the units in the original agreement were at a subsidized rate or at an interest rate in terms of the mortgage at 8 3/4%, which relates itself to the rent level. It is our intention, Mr. Speaker, to continue those kinds of rent levels where possible, but where the government is now in ownership of the mortgage and the property, we are looking at some instances where we will change those rents over to what we call the rent supplement program, so that a different vehicle will be used to provide a rent ceiling for those that are in need here in the city of Edmonton and in other places across the province.
Well, that was really my second program, Mr. Speaker, that the CHIP program is dying out, that the 15-year term life of that program is coming to an end this year and next year. Is this then the substitute for the entire CHIP program and all of the area of subsidized housing, this new initiative of moving or reverting to the supplemental program or the supplement program?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is very correct. That is our intent, to move towards the rent supplement program. And one of the values of that program is that we can work with both the private sector and the public sector and rent supplement a unit for up to a period of 35 years. Whereby we can maintain social housing, not with in an environment where the government doesn't own the capital or the building or the mortgage as such, but is able to move and allow the private sector to provide new and upgraded and adequate facilities for those that are in need of a rent supplement.
Mr. Speaker, my last question is this, that my understanding from the Edmonton Housing Authority is that they no longer have any units available. There is a waiting list. A recent study done in Edmonton also shows that there is a need for up to 800 new subsidized units. When will we know, Mr. Minister, when will we know whether you've got this matter under control and that this new reversion to this new program has been successful and that all the needs have been met?
Mr. Speaker, over the past 2 years, as the minister responsible for housing in the province, we've been negotiating with the federal government, who are partners in the rent supplement program. We go into a 70-30 partnership with regards to that rent support program. I have made the case to the federal government that we should have our share of rent supplement equal to the our percentage of population in Canada. That is around the 9% mark. We're close, I believe at the present time, our allocation is around between 6 and 7%. So I've been working on that. The former Minister of Housing, Mr. Redway, has noted our concern and our need and has been trying to supply it. I want to say this, though, Mr. Speaker, that as a province, we have been able to take advantage of that program in a greater way than other provinces of Canada, because other provinces have not been able to meet the 30% portion of this partnership. And we've been able to do it, and as the fiscal year has ended, we've been able to capitalize on that and use it to the advantage of our citizens.
Calgary McCall, followed by Edmonton Jasper, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, nobody is more concerned about the circumstances at the Bow Valley and Peter Lougheed Hospital than the member for Calgary McCall, I can assure you. And as has been indicated, yesterday there were some 330 positions, including some 100 nursing jobs from the Bow Valley and Peter Lougheed Hospital removed. And of course this includes the closure of some 32-bed nursing ward in each hospital. The issue that keeps appearing or being stated, Mr. Speaker, is that the government continues to cut funding to hospitals and health care, whereas there's considerable waste visible to employees and no action being taken by the various boards. To the Minister, could the Minister indicate what decreases or increases in funding the General Hospital is talking about when they state there are funding cuts, and why is it deemed necessary to close beds in these two hospitals that have been fraught with controversy over the last 3 to 4 years?
Mr. Speaker, there's been no decrease, I repeat, in response to the question that that was earlier asked today in the Legislative Assembly. There's been no decrease in support for health this year in the province. In fact, there's been a $292 million increase. The acute care budget, which flows to the all acute care hospitals in the province, has increased by over 8%. But certainly there is a reallocation going on within the health sector in order to be a fairer funding system to deal with the issue of equity within the health dollars already located. The Calgary General Hospital has certainly been impacted by that, but as the board has properly recognized, the carrying of a deficit of $6 million is something that sees health dollars going into debt servicing costs as opposed to providing health support for Albertans And I believe the board is moving responsible, particularly when they assure this province and this government that they will do their adjustments without affecting patient care and patient program, which is in fact the first purpose of the health system.
Well, Mr. Speaker, over the last number of years I've been concerned and a proponent of examining maybe why we need so many boards and what have you. And I'm just wondering if the minister will give consideration to examine the role of hospital boards and how they play the role in the province and the overall picture of health care, with a view of strengthening the manner in which hospitals can operate more efficiently using a private sector mode, yet maintaining the very high level of service Albertans have asked for.
Good point.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have no intention of reducing the number of boards in this province that deal with healthcare. In fact, I think it's one of the strengths of the Canadian healthcare system that it is publicly administered, and it is also administered by boards who are locally appointed. It ensures that we don't have a system that is centrally run and centrally organized, but rather one that is run with a local input. I think that's in fact a very solid strength in terms of our healthcare system. And to the credit of boards across this province, they are dealing with the reality of limited resources and infinite demand in terms of health services. I believe they're all committed, and I believe virtually all of the healthcare sector is committed to ensuring that we have a healthcare system that's sustainable and one that we can pass on to future generations. That's the goal of this government. That's what we're working hard to do. And frankly, we've got the support of health systems around this province, and I'm very proud of their support.
Edmonton Jasper, please.
Mr. Speaker, the government waited a few days after the legislature rose last December to announce it will license the largest single-line bleachcraft chlorine pulp mill in the world near the town of Athabasca. In so doing, they took the politically dangerous and legally dangerous course, setting aside an environmental assessment, substituting their own judgment, with the rationale of this three-member panel, with 3 men and a minister who override the rest of the world. And today in Edmonton, this report has been seriously challenged by a university chemistry professor and a private citizen in Edmonton. They point out that if all goes well, some 7 metric tons of toxic contaminated chlorine sludge goes into that river every day, headed straight downstream to the city of Fort McMurray. Now, we all know who wants to build this mill. I'd like to ask the minister, whose side are you on when you point a loaded effluent pipe at the city of Fort McMurray?
Hear, hear.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I've had a good meeting with the town or the city council of Fort McMurray, and they seem to be far less concerned than the honourable member, because they know that we're going to do the right thing and involve the people of Fort McMurray in the overall monitoring of the Alpac pulp mill at Athabasca. But I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that this Dr. Planbeck, who is the author of the report, is a friend of the NDP. I get that feeling. Because he gave the report to everyone else except the minister. I have not yet received the report. But I'm sure he trotted right over and gave it to the honourable member for Jasper Place right away. But he hasn't yet. Well, I am, as a matter of fact, this is my only source of information.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Supplementary, Edmonton Jasper, please.
It's not a question of friends and enemies. It's a question of lives and health and safety. And it's not just Fort McMurray. It's Fort Chipewyan, Fort Mackay, and all of the communities downstream in the Northwest Territories. Alberta has forced its neighbors in the Northwest Territories into the courts to make their point, which is that not everybody can live upstream from these pulp mills. I would like to ask, in view of the minister's statement that he's going to shut down the mills if they can't operate safely, my question is, with Procter & Gamble and Weldwood and all we know today, why should we believe you now when you say that?
Well, you know, with all the concern this honourable member professes to demonstrate, if he's that concerned, I think I would have thought that he would have given me the report at least to examine. But to set the record straight, Mr. Speaker, because I think that this is important. First of all, I'd like to point out that both Dr. Plemback and Mitch Brono, who is also named in the newspaper article, were interveners in the original LPAC review panel. As a matter of fact, both received in excess of $3,000 in intervener funding. But to set the record straight, the LPAC permit to construct regulates the company's discharge to 436 kilograms of adsorbable organic halides per day, or 0.29 kilograms of adsorbable organic halides per ton of pulp. This is what the permit allows. This is what the permit says. Read the permit if you're capable of doing so. The permit also disallows any chlorine use in the bleaching process. Disallows any chlorine use in the bleaching process. The environmental standards for the Alberta Pacific Pulp Mill are indeed the most stringent in the world.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we had layoffs in public health. Today all parties have expressed alarm about the layoffs at the Calgary General Hospital. Another illustration that healthcare workers are becoming an endangered species in this province. Mr. Speaker, the minister tells us that waiting lists aren't a bad thing and don't mean a restriction of access. I think that's a highly insensitive and somewhat irresponsible remark from the Minister of Health. She speaks to us, Mr. Speaker, about reallocation of resources. Well, if we're going to reallocate the resources, there has to be a system in place, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that Albertans released early or treated as outpatients aren't at risk. My question to the Minister is, when will the Minister be expanding the eligibility criteria for home care as was promised about a year ago?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not prepared to answer that question at this point. I can certainly indicate to the honourable member that I am a strong advocate, as is this government, for seeing that the rate of growth on the community side is greater than the growth rate on the acute care side. And I look to what has happened in community health this year over last, where we see an increase of 11.6% on the community health sector and an increase of about 8% on the acute care sector. I think that's an important statement of priority, Mr. Speaker, and it's an important statement of direction which we intend to continue to follow as a government.
Mr. Speaker, if Albertans are going to have quality health care, these rates have got to come out even. Will the Minister tell us if the Minister first ensured in Calgary that there was an adequate level of community services available, particularly home care, before the bed closures occurred?
Well, Mr. Speaker, if there was any misunderstanding on the part of the honourable member, the statement is one of priority in terms of growth towards the community sector. A very important directional statement, particularly in light of the Rainbow Report. And as well, the honourable member doesn't quite understand that it is not just the community sector that does services outside the in-hospital service sector. One of the important things that's going on at the Calgary General Hospital, in fact it's going on throughout this province, is a reallocation of services to an outpatient sector rather than the inpatient sector. I fully acknowledge that that means that sometimes it's perhaps a little less convenient, but I also believe it's directing our health dollars where they need to go, which is to provide health services for Albertans in a reasonable access when they need them. I look forward to further discussions on health in this Assembly as we work through the budget process.
Calgary Glenmore.
The City of Calgary has recently been making requests that the government set a policy allowing more flexibility in the use of provincial grants, and particularly relating to unconditional grants. An example, if the Minister of Transportation gave the money for roads and they decide they don't want potholes filled, could they then transfer these dollars to social service needs? And I'd like to ask the Minister of Municipal Affairs if the Minister could indicate to the Assembly whether or not he's considering the flexibility of provincial grants to municipalities throughout the province of Alberta.
Mr. Speaker, to the honourable member, the answer is yes. We certainly are always looking for areas whereby we can provide grants to the local government. I would make one comment with regards to the transportation grants, and there must be two reasons, as I have assessed the matter, as to why Calgary wants to reallocate some of their transportation grants for other purposes. One is that there is an adequate supply of those grants to have met the needs of Calgarians over the last few years. And secondly, when the former mayor was there, he spent a lot of time filling potholes. And they don't need that job done at the present time. But I think we should note in a more serious manner, Mr. Speaker, that in this province we transfer to municipalities over $600 million in conditional and unconditional grants. 30% of those, over $220 million, are for unconditional, and those grants can be spent in any way. If you look at the city of Calgary on a per capita basis, that would be over $60 million that the city has to use in a very flexible and responsible way.
I'd like to make my supplementary, or forward my supplementary to the Minister of Family and Social Services with regards to the document released on social service needs and transferring these grants from municipalities to the needs that the city has outlined with regards to social service. And if he could indicate how these grants from his department are released to the city of Calgary.
Mr. Speaker, as a department and as a government, we are in partnership with the City of Calgary directly in a number of ways, and with community agencies throughout the City of Calgary in a number of ways. I would point out to the member for Glenmore that through our Family and Community Support Services program, we provide the City of Calgary with close to $9 million that they are able to spend on an unconditional basis and are able to establish priorities on. Further to that, as a department, Mr. Speaker, we are spending in excess of $50 million in contracting community services throughout the city. But I would also want to point out to the member, Mr. Speaker, that I have made contact with the Mayor's office, and that I intend to sit down and discuss with the Mayor further the report that he's just recently had handed over to him.
Calgary Mountain View, followed by Calgary Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 300 Calgarians who work at the Calgary General Hospital are going to be losing jobs because of funding cuts from this health minister. I'm told that the cuts are being made in part, Mr. Speaker, to hand money over to the Foothills Hospital to help them with their projected $7 million deficit. She talks about balanced budgets. The Foothills is a Crown provincial hospital. Will she now admit that these Calgarians are being punished to pay the bills at a hospital she's directly responsible for?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, part of the plan at the Calgary General Hospital is to privatize housekeeping services. These people are valued employees. Many are women, single parents. Lots of them are immigrants who've worked at these jobs since they've come to Canada. Now this minister is going to throw them in the street to fend for themselves and their families at whatever jobs they can get, whether it be $5, $6, or $7 an hour. Will this minister admit she's sacrificing the lives and the people and the families who are least able to protect themselves in her obsession with balanced budgets and contracting out of services?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it certainly is a better obsession than the protection of the status quo, which is obviously the way the New Democrats, despite all their wonderful rhetoric, feel about the future of the healthcare system in this province and in this nation. And I will repeat that at no time have I, or do I feel, that anyone's loss of a job is something that we should be lauding or feeling good about in any way, shape, or form. However, I would repeat that the first purpose of the health system, the first purpose why Albertans dedicate $3.6 billion to this incredible system of health, is to provide reasonable access to health services by Albertans. That is its first purpose. And I believe that the Calgary General Hospital Board, in assuring Albertans that there will not be a reduction in patient care, is recognizing that that has to be their first priority, however difficult a management decision that is to make.
Calgary Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question today is to the Honourable Premier. This government is developing quite a record and reputation for developing a terrific patronage system. We know now that good Tories don't die, they just get good government cushy jobs. The taxpayers of Alberta really want assurances that when millions of dollars are at stake, as in Novotel, which is what my question is leading to, Honourable Premier, they want to know that the best person is at the helm of the company, or in this case, Novotel. My question to the Premier is this. Could the Premier please tell me what rationale there was for putting in someone like the Honourable Neil Weber, who does not have the expertise in the high-tech industry, as chairman of the board of TELUS, which was responsible for Novotel until the end of 1990?
Mr. Speaker, I guess it's the same judgment that is made for every appointment that a government is required to make, is that you look and you find the person best capable of doing the job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplementary question is simply this. The Minister of Technology, Research and Telecommunications has seen fit to blame the auditors, the underwriters, and everyone who gave him advice. My question to the Premier is simply this. Is it not also acceptable or a requirement that the government, of course, is accountable, but also the chairman and the board of TELUS that was responsible for Novotel must ultimately also be held accountable for the failure of Novotel and the loss of $204 million in 1990?
Mr. Speaker, the minister responsible for Novotel and TELUS has already dealt with that matter in the House several times.
Calgary Foothills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs. I'd like to know, has the minister been involved in any discussions which could lead to a change in the Constitution of Canada to permit individual provincial jurisdictions to unilaterally withdraw from the Canadian Confederation?
Mr. Speaker, the short answer to the question is no, but I think it's important to underline the fact that the Canadian Constitution, as accepted and patriated to Canada in 1982, contains no provision for the exit, if you will, of any part of Canada to anywhere else. There is nothing established in the Constitution of Canada today or in our constitutional tradition for deleting from the country. There are, of course, provisions for adding, and that, of course, is my hope that eventually we will see a provincial status for the territories and so on. But there is no such provision now, and quite frankly, our government has not been engaged in any such discussions, nor do we regard it as being productive at this time in Canada's history to start or participate in that type of conversation, either with other governments or in any other way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In lieu of the fact that there isn't a constitutional vehicle, has the minister received the proposals from the province of Quebec as to their strategy and methodology for sovereignty association?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that process is still being developed, I gather, within Quebec, but I want to underline very clearly our position, that is, that there's no mandate on the part of the federal government to negotiate the constitutional future of Canada solely with one of the other partners, namely the province of Quebec. And it's a fundamental principle that all provinces must be part of any future constitutional